Okay.
Now it's perfect. Yeah.
So this presentation is about Stapeliads, very interesting plants, succulents. On this slide, you have some examples of Stapeliads, and here is where they belong when it comes to taxonomy. They are from the, like, obviously they are plants, and order Gentianales, which is a higher rank than family Apocynaceae, and subfamily Asclepiadoideae. In the old days, they belonged to a family Asclepiadaceae, which was a larger entity than subfamily. But the consensus around the belonging of the taxonomical belonging of this family has changed, and now it's family Apocynaceae, subfamily Asclepiadoideae, and tribe Stapelia. And here is the list of all the genera that belong to this tribe. There are 29 of them, quite a lot. Many of them are quite common in the within the collectors, quite commonly kept as house plants or in the collectors' collections. Okay, so that's the list. And here is the distribution of Stapeliads. They are on the shores of Africa, Mediterranean shore, and then the east coast, the Indian Ocean coast, and South Africa. The Arabian Peninsula, and Southwest Asia, south of the Himalaya mountains. And there is one species of Caralluma, which is Caralluma is a genera of Stapeliads that is found in Europe, on the Mediterranean coast of Spain. Okay, so that's, and there are also Stapeliads on Madagascar. Stapeliads are stem succulents, which means succulent is a plant that is designed, that has the evolutionary design to store water in dry environments. And stem succulents have lost their leaves, and all the photosynthesis and all the everything that in a normal plant is happening in the leaves is taking place in the stem, and the leaves are lost in order to reduce the surface area through which water can evaporate. However, it is not a primary feature of a plant. Like being a stem succulent is something that had to be developed, and the original plants from which this succulentism, stem succulentism, was developed had leaves. And some of the Stapeliads, like this one, for example, still have leaves, didn't lose them all in the evolutionary process. But most Stapeliads look like this. They are just stems, green stems, and this seems to be a perfect adaptation to dry conditions, because not only Stapeliads developed that feature, are not only Stapeliads found their way to go and to inhabit the dry areas in this way, to become stem succulents. Here is an example of a Euphorbia, which is a stem succulent, Euphorbia milii in this case, a stem succulent that has still leaves, but it's much more efficiently adapted to dry condition when it loses its leaves. So this Euphorbia resinifera, is an example of a stem succulent from a completely different group, not related to Stapeliads, that look very much like a Stapeliad. And here is another example. This is Perescia, which is a very primitive cactus that didn't lose its leaves in the process of evolution yet. It developed spines just like all cacti, but it still has leaves. And in the process of evolution, in the process of being adapted more and more to dry conditions, the leaves were lost. And here is a plant that looks exactly like the two plants that I showed you on the slides before, the Euphorbia and Stapelia. So this phenomenon of being adapted to the same condition and developing the same features and not being related in an evolutionary way is called convergent evolution. So both cacti and Stapeliads and Euphorbias are just developed the same features, and it is called convergent evolution. So looking at the shape of the plant, looking at the stem and the leaves, it is not really a good indication how the plants are related to each other. And the taxonomy of plants looks more at flowers, because flowers are very conservative organs that develop independently of the conditions in which the plant grows. Flowers are evolving with their pollinators. So when so the taxonomy is, before it started looking into the genetics and the DNA of the organisms of the plants, in this case, the taxonomy was looking at the flowers, at how the flower is, well, at the shape of the flowers and all the features of the flowers. So the Stapeliads have flowers that are 5-point stars. And most of the flowers have the colors of dead carcasses or rotting meat, and most of them have a smell of rotting meat, because they are pollinated by flies, and they evolved with flies to make it possible to be pollinated by flies. And this 5-point star shape can be shown by the plants in a different way. So here is a very small plant with very small, very pointy flowers. This is Pseudolithops. And here is another Pseudolithops, very small body of the plant and very small flowers. But the flowers can also be huge. This flower is a Stapelia gigantea, a flower of Stapelia gigantea, which is the largest flower of all Stapeliads, and it is 20+ centimeters across. So it's a very large plant, a very large flower. The flowers can be of different colors as well, and this one is greenish, and this flower is not on is also hairy, and this one is smooth and reddish, brownish in color. Again, a green color, very rough surface of the petals. Another flower which shows very pointy petals, and something in between. And this one is not like the petals are very short, and it is more the shape of a pentagon than a star. And again, flowers that are very, very tiny here, and not that tiny, but again, the color is a color of that looks very attractive to flies. And a glossy plant that looks very much like a starfish, this one. So different shapes and different colors, but all of them are designed to be attractive to flies, because flies are the insects that pollinate these plants, that pollinate these flowers. And here is a sketchy picture of a very typical Stapeliad flower. This is an Orbea. And what's interesting about Stapeliad's flowers is that the male and female organs are merged together. So they are not separated. They are just, this is just one male and female organ together. And that the pollen is not really like in a typical flower, like just like a dust that can be collected by a brush when someone wants to artificially pollinate the flower. The pollen is just like a cluster of bits of pollen cells. So it is called pollinium, and this pollinium has to match the opening in the female parts of the flower. So it is very difficult to artificially pollinate these plants, and somehow flies can do it. And for people, for a hand carrying a brush, it is a very difficult task. So very rarely in collections there are flowers that produce seeds, just because they are not exposed to flies. However, it is possible. And here is a picture of seed pods of Stapelia variegata. Each flower is producing 2 pods, and they are filled with seeds. They are packed with seeds, and the seeds are designed to be, because they are quite hairy, they have hairy structures at the tip, at their tips, so they are designed to be blown away from the plant by the wind. So this is an open seed pod of Stapelia variegata. And just to make it, to show you how conservative the flowers the flowers are, and how similar the flowers of the same family but completely different genera from a different environments, from different habitats. This is milkweed, which is a plant that is very popular in Ontario, very common plant, very common Ontario plant, which is doesn't have anything to do with succulents. It's a plant with regular stem, regular leaves, that grows in Ontario fields. The flowers are very similar in shape to Stapeliad flowers. They are 5-pointed stars, very scented, although not because they are not pollinated by flies, they are pollinated by butterflies. So the scent is very different, but they are also very scented. And these are 2 seed pods that grew from the same flower. And this is an open seed pod with seeds that look exactly like seeds of Stapelia variegata. So that's a very interesting, in my opinion, very interesting comparison of a plant that is from the same family, that has flowers that are very, very similar, however, grows in different environment, in different habitat, and the body of the plant is completely different, but it is because it's adapted to completely different conditions. Stapeliads are very unpredictable plants when in a collection, when taken care of at home or in a greenhouse. They are very moody plants, and they are plants that are, it's very difficult to say whether they are difficult or easy, because some things might go very well with them, and then all of a sudden something might crash, something might happen that will make it just, I just got a notice that my internet is not stable, so things might happen, we'll see. So it's very difficult to say how to take care of them, because again, the things might be going very well for a long time, and then all of a sudden something might happen and the plant will die just from one week to the other. So they don't like very intense light, but they like to be in a well lit place, but not direct light, not direct sunlight. They don't like to be in a shade either, so something in between, filtered light. If they are left on in a place that is too sunny, they will become red, and they will be showing signs of light stress. The temperature, they like to be in hot temperatures. If they are put into dormancy in winter, the temperature cannot be lower than 10 degrees Celsius. But they are quite happy when left just in room temperature during winter as well. But in that case, they need to be watered in winter. And they don't seem to mind. It doesn't seem to be influencing their growth and their flowering, just like in case of cacti. When cacti are left in room temperature, when they don't go through the dormancy period, they will not bloom. With Stapeliads, it's not the case. So if they are left in room temperature, they need to be watered during winter time as well, not as much as in the summertime, but they need to be watered just a little bit. However, if they are kept in lower temperatures, they can be left dry. Soil needs to be with good drainage. They don't have very deep roots. However, they can, if the soil is not rich in organic matter, which means if the soil doesn't store much water, they have to be watered quite heavily, because if left completely dry for a prolonged time, they might dry out. The body of the plant, their stems might just dry out and die. On the other hand, if they are kept too wet, either because the soil is too rich, or because they are watered too often, they will also show their mood, and they might just rot. So somewhere in between, they can't be too dry, they can't be watered too much either. So if someone is experienced with them, or maybe not experienced, but just has the right conditions for them, they will grow nicely. But if something is wrong for them, they will show their mood, they will show their temper. But on the other hand, I know that I think Dave from our club gave me advice to always have 2 specimens of the same species, just in case something goes wrong with one, there will be the other, and not to keep them together, to keep them in separate pots, in separate places. And so just in case something happens with one plant, there will be a backup plant, if just in case. Okay. The propagation is by cuttings, and they root very easily. The cuttings are separated very easily, one stem from the other, one stem section from the other stem section. That's easily done. And then the roots start very easily. You can either put the cutting in just in a pot and start watering it after a certain period of time. I know that a member of our club propagated Stapelia variegata, but just by putting stem sections in the water, and that was also, and he was also very successful with that. The other way of propagation is with through seeds. However, seeds are not that easily formed on those plants. So propagating by seeds, apparently they are sprouting quite easily, but to get the plant to produce seeds is quite tricky. So now I would like to show you my plants, because up until now all the pictures that I showed you were pictures of plants just from the internet. They were not my pictures. And here are my plants, and here is my small collection of Stapeliads. I keep them on a windowsill. It is or on the shelves that are put across the window. It is a south-facing window. However, there is a hedge behind it, which casts some shade on the window, so that it is not a truly south-facing window. Like it is south-facing, but there is not as much light as there would have been otherwise because of the hedge. And here is a very nice, in my opinion, and quite easy plant, Stapelia scitula, with miniature flowers, very small, hairy flowers, very nice plant, very easily flowering plant. And here is Huernia thuretii, which was growing very nicely up to a certain point, up to a certain time. I still have it, but I didn't have any flowers this year, and I didn't have any flowers last year either. So I hope next year will be a better year for this plant. It's an old picture, very nice flower. I am very fond of it. Maybe because it doesn't grow for me. So maybe because it doesn't grow for me, I am just thinking and taking care of it more of other plants. Okay, here is Huernia procumbens. I'm not sure whether it's very attractive. It looks more like drying bones than drying flesh, or somewhere on a desert. I don't know, but I know. Again, I'm not sure whether it's very attractive, but it certainly is a very interesting flower. And here is Huernia zebrina, which is sometimes called a lifesaver cactus, even though it doesn't have anything common with a cactus, other than people are calling all succulents cacti sometimes. And lifesaver because it has a ring here in the center. Very nice flower, not too big, but very attractive. And here on this picture, we can see how the plant grows, and the stem sections are growing one section from the other. And in nature, they would not grow down, they would just spread out, and these stems would probably take roots when they meet conditions that would allow them to produce roots. And that's how the plant would grow away from the center of it. And that's how the plant would spread and cover larger areas. And here is Huernia keniensis, which grows in a very similar way, except the stems are much longer, and sometimes they are really long, and when they get too long, they just break off under their own weight. And again, the same thing. Instead of growing down, in nature they would grow far away from the plant, and that way they would root somewhere on their way further from the plant, and that way the plant would cover a larger area. So here is a look of the flower on the inside of it. Maybe not the best picture, but here are two flowers. And what I really like about this particular species is that the flowers on the inside are very nicely colored, but also on the outside, the bell-shaped flower has a really nice design on the outside as well. And here is Huernia macrocarpa, very similar flower, except the petals are very rough, quite bumpy, velvety, very nice. And this Huernia macrocarpa, as well as Huernia schneideriana, they have flowers usually at the base of the stem, close to the soil. So it tells me that maybe, that's my speculation, I have no idea, but it tells me that maybe something that is pollinating it is not maybe a good flyer. Maybe it's something that is rather walking on the ground rather than flying. Is better at walking or crawling than flying. I'm not sure about that, but it just occurred to me that all the other species have their flowers somewhere at the in the middle of the stem or far away from the ground, and these ones always have flowers. This one and this one have always flowers close to the soil, close to the base of the plant. Okay, and this is Caralluma burchardi, a completely different plant, different colors, different flowers. The shape of the stem is the same. It's just a stem succulent, but the flowers grow in a cluster, and they are very hairy. They are tiny flowers. They are not big at all, but very, very pretty in my opinion, just because of their velvety petals and unusual colors. And it blooms quite easily as well on the tip of the stem. So when the stem, maybe you can see here, there are flowers that were at the tip of the stem a long time ago, and then the stem grew, and there is a new cluster of flowers at the tip. And when it grows even further, there will be hopefully new flowers at the tip of the stem. And here are flower buds, and here are flowers that are already closed, already faded. And the last plant from my collection, Orbea variegata. It is the plant the first plant from this group that I have had, and in my opinion, the one that I like the most. Maybe I won't say the most beautiful, the prettiest, because they are all pretty, but I think I like it the most just because of the very unusual shape and of the very It's maybe silly to say, but this one really smells. This one produces really strong smell. So it's not that I like the smell, but I like the fact that it does produce it, and it's so unusual. So yes, this is it. This is my presentation, and this is my collection of Stapeliads. Thank you very much for listening.